Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 10th of September 2017 and the 5th of Nasi, the last day of the year 1733 AM. I'm Tawadros. In today's headlines, Israeli mayors ask US to resolve Gaza's electricity crisis, Iraqi's military recaptures central Tal Afar from ISIS, leaked papers says Britain to reduce EU migration after Brexit, Putin says Russia may force US to cut more diplomatic staff, Pope Francis to begin peace-building visits to Colombia, Zika virus a solution to treating aggressive brain cancer, Arsenal boss Arsene Wenger says Alexis Sanchez will return to his best. To Israel now, where a group of local Israeli leaders have warned Israel and the United States that the sewage crisis in Gaza could lead to a spread of disease and cause long-term environmental damage. Gaza lacked the power to run a new sewage facility in the north of the region for more than a few hours a day because of the ongoing electricity crisis. The facility was introduced as a substitute to relieve the burden on the existing plant, and as a result, raw sewage pipes up on the beaches of Gaza and the southern Israel, contaminating the groundwater in the process. The sewage problem has forced beach closures in Gaza and Israel, as well as stoppage of groundwater pumping stations. Calling on Israeli and American leaders to provide Gaza with electricity to run the plants, the group warned the entire region is on the verge of health crisis that does not take into account political borders. In a letter handed to the US Special Envoy for International Negotiations, Jason Greenblatt, during his recent visit, the group added, "It is an absurd situation in which Israel tries to curb the effects of the untreated sewage, instead of providing the power of treat to it before it harms the environment." The letter, signed by Shar Haneggev, Regional Council Head Alon Shutzka and others, also warned that without providing a fundamental and long-term solution to the crisis, it will be coming to our doorsteps. In addition to the threats of tunnels, mortars and missiles, we will also be dealing with the pollution of the sea and beaches, pollution of drinking water and pollution of the water of agriculture in the area, the letter concluded. Over to Iraq now, where Iraqi forces have recaptured the urban centre of Tal Afar from ISIS fighters, giving the government near control of a key city in their fight against the terror group. Tal Afar was captured by the extremists on June 16, 2014, after a two-day battle. Retaking the northwestern city was the latest objective in the US-backed fight against ISIS. The city is strategically important as it lies on the supply routine between Syria and the former ISIS stronghold of Mosul. The offensive started 2 weeks ago with several divisions of Iraqi security, including American-trained counter-terrorism forces, advancing on the city from different sides. The commander for the operation, Lieutenant General Abdelmanar Yarallah, said only one enclave northwest of the city centre remained under ISIS control. Iraqi Joint Military Command spokesperson Brigadier General Yahya Rasool told CNN that 2 Iraqi military divisions were now advancing towards that final ISIS-occupied enclave, Al-Adaya, and its surrounding villages. Tal Afar was the last city still under the control of ISIS militants in Iraq's Nineveh province following the liberation of Mosul about 45 miles to the east. There are concerns that ISIS fighters and violence could return to the city more than a month after Mosul was declared liberated. Violence and sleeper cells still exist in the city's west. Yarallah said counter-terrorism forces had raised the Iraqi flag in the central areas of the Citadel and Al-Bastin. The UK government has drawn up plans aimed at slashing the levels of migration from the European Union immediately after Brexit, according to a document obtained by The Guardian. Officials at the Home Office, the UK government department responsible for immigrations, outlined a series of stringent measures aimed at making immigration from UE harder after Britain leaves the bloc in 2019. They include ending the free movement of labour on the day that Britain leaves the EU and making it harder for lower skilled workers to enter. Opponents of Brexit criticised the measures as unnecessarily harsh, and some commentators said they were at odds with the government's stated aim of achieving a transition deal with the EU after Brexit. However, government ministers said voters expected to see a reduction in immigration. According to the draft paper, which ministers have yet to approve, the UK would attempt to ensure the businesses give priority to resident labour. EU citizens who come to the UK for lower skilled jobs could be awarded a 2-year residency, while those in higher skilled occupations could be given 5 years. The changes could come to an end of the transition period after Britain's departure, which could last up to 3 years. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin has said Moscow may force the United States to cut an additional 155 of its diplomatic personnel in Russia if tensions persist between the two countries. We reserve the rights to further reduce the number of US diplomats in Moscow, Putin told reporters at the summit of the BRICS nations in the southern China. He also said, "We are not going to do this now. We will see how the situation develops." Putin's remarks are the latest in a series of tension diplomatic exchange between the two nations following the US allegations that Russia interfered in 2016 presidential election. Last week, the Trump administration announced it was closing the Russian consulate in San Francisco as well as branches in Washington and New York, in response to mandate staff cuts at the US mission in Russia. The American plan to close the 3 diplomatic facilities followed Moscow's orders for almost half of US personnel to leave their positions in Russia and the seizure of 2 US diplomatic properties in response to expanding sanctions passing by Congress, Putin said. The fact that Americans have reduced the number of diplomatic representation in the US, it is their right, but it was done not in polite manner, and that does not give credit to our American partners. Putin apparently came up with the figure of 155 because he said that 155 of Russia's staff in the United States were not really diplomats, but part of its UN mission in New York. In July, he sought to reduce the number of US diplomats in Russia to 455, a figure equal to the number of Russian diplomats now in the United States, according to the Russian foreign minister. The Russian leader also he could sue US authorities over violating Russia's property rights. This was unprecedented, and I was gratitude of Petersburg University School of Law. I can tell you that the American side has taken away the rights to use our property, and this is a violation of our rights, Putin said. I think to start with, we should go to the court and we should go see how effective the American court system works, he added. When Pope Francis arrives in Colombia this week for a 5-day visit, he'll be on difficult terrain, and not just because of the country's high altitude. In early 2016, Francis promised he would visit the South American country once a peace agreement ending its civil war of more than 50 years had been reached. A few months later, the government and FARC rebels forged an agreement, but Colombian voters struck it down in a referendum. A revised agreement was not put to a second referendum, but passed in Colombia's Congress last November. President Juan Manuel Santos received the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts, but the deal is still unpopular. Now the Pope must make good on his promise and help the peace agreed to on paper became a reality in the hearts of the divided Colombians. The Pope and the Vatican diplomacy have been working for several years to help Colombia achieve peace. In December, Francis personally brought together Santos and opposition leader former President Álvaro Uribe in an unprecedented 3-way meeting at the Vatican. He publicly called on Colombia's leaders to push forward on the path to peace from Havana's Revolution Plaza during a visit to Cuba in 2015. "We do not have the rights to allow ourselves yet another failure," he said. The 52-year-old civil war in Colombia, the longest in Latin American history, has claimed 220,000 lives and displaced millions. During his visit, Francis will stay at the papal ambassador's residence in Bogota and take day trips to Villavicencio, Medellin and Cartagena. The Pope will also participate in a prayer meeting for national reconciliation in Villavicencio with some 6,000 victims of violence, former fighters and military. At a mass at the end of the week, Francis will beatify 2 Colombian priests who were killed in violence. To health news, and a harmful virus that can cause devastating brain damage in babies could offer up a surprising new treatment for adult brain cancer, according to the US scientists. Until now, Zika has only been seen as a global health threat, not a remedy. However, the latest research shows the virus can selectively infect and kill hard-to-treat cancerous cells in adult brains. Zika injections shrank aggressive tumours in fully grown mice, yet left other brain cells unscattered. Human trials are also still way off, but experts believe that Zika virus could potentially be injected into the brain at the same time as surgery to remove life-threatening tumours. The Journal of Experimental Medicine reports. The latest research in living mice and donated human brain tissue samples shows the Zika therapy can kill cells that tend to be resistant to current treatment. It is thought that these glioblastoma stem cells continue to grow and divide, preceding new tumour cells even after aggressive medical treatment. Different healthy stem cells are found in abundance in baby brains, which probably explains why regular Zika can be so damaging to infants, says the researchers. Adult brains, however, have very few stem cells. This means Zika treatment could destroy only the cancer-causing brain stem cells without causing much collateral damage. As an extra safety precaution, the team from Washington University School of Medicine and the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine have already begun modifying the virus to make it more tame than regular Zika. And in sport, Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger says star forward Alexis Sanchez will have no problems reproducing his best form for the club despite an uncomfortable transfer window. Chile forward Sanchez, 28, came close to joining Manchester City on deadline day, but Wenger has no doubt about Alexis' mind and mentality. Arsenal agreed a £60 million deal with City, but it depended on them signing Thomas Lemar, who decided to stay with Monaco. He will be back very quickly to his best, said the Frenchman. The transfer market is over. There was a lot going on. It's very difficult to speak about because Lemar is now at Monaco and has to focus there. Sanchez is here and his focus is here, Wenger added. Many things happened in the last second, which I regret. That's why I believe it's time we change the rules and close the transfer window before the league season starts. Wenger goes on to say he thinks every manager in the league would agree it's time to kick that out before the season starts, insisting teams can't have players in the dressing room who already have one foot at another club. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Tawadros, and from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, have a good night.